and knowing that death is inevitable, is inescapable, is something that we all think about in different ways. Here, it is a solution, a hope that afterwards there will be a rebirth. So I wonder if Joe believes in the afterlife, whereas someone like me, I don't believe in the afterlife. Welcome, metalheads, to Heavy Metal Philosophy. I'm your host, your sommelier of extreme metal and blue-collar philosopher, John Barbas. And today, we're doing the philosophy of Gojira, Terra Incognita. If you're a long-time listener of the podcast, then you know that I've already done one of these, the philosophy of Metallica, Ride the Lightning, and I had planned on doing more episodes in that series. Master of Puppets would have been next, but it's been such an eventful year, and there's been so many things for me to cover every week, I haven't gotten around to it. And then, in the comments of that episode, somebody requested that I do Gojira, which I'm more than happy to do because I love Gojira. So just like with Metallica, I'm starting right at the beginning, their first album, Terra Incognita, which means unknown land in Latin. And that's fitting because after listening to the album all day and reading over the lyrics over and over and over, I've come to the conclusion that this album is biophilia as a solution for the author's existential dissatisfaction. Biophilia means love for living things, especially in nature. There's a lot of dissatisfaction with humanity on this album and a lot of admiration for not only nature and the forest, but also space and time itself. There's a lot of admiration for the inner workings of the universe expressed, and a desire to return to the natural world, and a desire to be reborn after our inevitable death into something greater, hopefully better than what the author is dissatisfied with. If you're a long-time listener of the podcast, then you already know that we've determined that metal is not just a rebellious art form, but it is wholly consumed with existentialism. But very few albums or bands are going to express it as cut and dry, as plainly as Gojira does. Most, especially in the death metal genre, most bands are going to express themselves in more of a metaphorical sense. There's a lot of tongue-in-cheek death and gore in death metal, but Gojira just comes right out and says it. There's no talk about zombies or slasher killers, anything like that. He just comes out and says, humanity's fucked, we're all gonna die, and our salvation lies in returning to nature. My favorite critiques of humanity on the album come from the first three songs. You've got Clone, which is all about how we are more and better than just our genetic makeup if only we would rise above. And you've got Lizard Skin, which is all about what we've become after the abuse that we take. And then there's my favorite title on the album, Satan is a Lawyer, which is all about how society has this gleam of perfection, but in reality that lawyer presentation of the rules in society is actually what's wrong with society and is going to be our downfall. And then after that, we get the prescription to the problem. We get songs like Deliverance. And this one was interesting to me because in the lyrics, Joe says that he's going to fight and kill Thanatos. He's going to fight back against the natural order of things. But it's interesting to me that he chose the god Thanatos to fight and kill, because Thanatos is the god that carries forth people to the underworld after they die. But Thanatos is the god of peaceful death, people that die peacefully. His brother is Hypnos, which is the god of sleep. It's actually Thanatos' sisters who are the gods of violent death. If you're concerned about justice, I wonder why you wouldn't choose his sisters, why you would choose the god that carries you forth in the natural order of things. But maybe just Thanatos sounded better in the lyrics. I'm not sure why that choice was made, but I did find it very interesting that he chose Thanatos as the god that he wanted to fight against. Then you've got songs like Space Time, which, as I said in the beginning, expresses his admiration for the physical universe and the way it works, and his desire to reach out to it and touch the light of the sun and the stars. The word light is in the lyrics 13 times in this album. The word fire is mentioned 6 times, and that's not to count all the times that Joe has the words sun, stars, moon, blaze, other light conjuring imagery. So this album is all about getting back to the light, or after death returning to the light and being reborn. This is expressed rather plainly and upfront in the song Rise. I'm going to read those lyrics for you here. In the song Rise, Joe says, "Present at my funeral, I know I'll rise and meet myself reborn." And this is, again, in metal, an express acknowledgement of existentialism. We all know that we're going to die, and knowing that death is inevitable, is inescapable, is something that we all think about in different ways. Here, it is a solution, a hope that afterwards there will be a rebirth. So I wonder if Joe believes in the afterlife, whereas someone like me, I don't believe in the afterlife. Now, I don't know what the energy that is that makes up myself is going to do after I die. Maybe it does go on and do something else, but I just don't believe that my conscious self will live forever in another dimension. If I do retain my consciousness after I die, I won't be the same, because I won't be embodied in this flesh that is driven by my hormones and my hunger and my physical desires and the pain that is currently racking my lower back as we speak. All these physical ailments of my flesh that have so much influence over my personality will no longer be a factor in my consciousness if, in fact, my consciousness does survive the death of my body, which I'm not so sure that it will. But here, when we have Joe talking about being reborn after his funeral, that makes me think that he does believe in the afterlife. And reading their backstory, I did see that he read a lot of spiritual texts. Now, this was later in his career, much after this album was written, so maybe his spiritual awakening didn't happen till later, or maybe he was already interested in it during the point of this album and he only explored it further later. Speaking of spirituality, we also have a song on this album entitled Love, which is not something you will see in death metal, hardly ever. It may be the only death metal song named Love. I don't know of any. But it's, again, a death metal band. This isn't a pop band. They don't really talk about romantic love very much, and this song isn't about romantic love. This is, again, an expression of admiration for the natural universe. And it's a very spiritual song that is perfectly encapsulated by the line, "The stars illuminate my being." And again, there's that concept, that theme of the light. "Stars illuminate my being. Behold thy servant, you the force that makes the planets be." So the name of the song is Love, but again, it's all about the attributes of space and the natural universe. So I don't know what religion Joe and Mario and the rest of the guys in Gojira have, but it's clear that they do have some sort of spiritual appreciation that is heavily involved with not only nature. We all know that Gojira are environmentalists, but the entire universe and the way that it works. So I haven't really in the past listened to this first album very often because Gojira didn't get on my radar until around 2008 or 9 or so. You know, the post, like, I'm not sure if Magma was out then or not, but that Magma, Mars to Sirius sort of era of Gojira, that's when they first hit my radar. So I haven't really gone back and explored their back catalog until now. And it's really interesting to listen to the first 2 or 3 Gojira albums in comparison to the last 2, because while they started out as a death metal band, perhaps you could say a tech death band, but you could hear the early things in their albums that makes them Gojira. They didn't really find their what we think of as the Gojira sound until I'd say probably like the 3rd or the 4th album, but you could hear where it started. You could hear where it came from. There's subtle Gojira-isms in this first album. There's a lot of like death metal riffs like this, and you simply won't hear those kind of riffs on any of the new Gojira albums anymore. But there's a lot of riffs like this that you will hear on all the Gojira albums. It's like they found what makes them unique and ran with it and dropped all the stuff that sounds like what other people are doing. And as I've said before, you know, there's really only a couple of ways to make it in the music industry. You know, you can sound like other bands and you just have to write a really great song. It has a great hook or a great riff that really catches a hold of people and they remember it. Or you could have your own sound that redefines the way we think of the genre. I'm thinking about bands like Tool, thinking about bands like Meshuggah, you know, back in the day before thrash was a thing, bands like Metallica and Slayer. You know, these bands are undeniable. You can't live in a world where Tool doesn't exist and then you go to a bar and hear Tool play and you don't call your buddies and be like, I heard this band that you cannot believe. I've never heard a band sound like this before. And I put Gojira in that same category. They're undeniable, and they happen to write great songs with great hooks and memorable riffs as well. So it's a double whammy. I can't think of a universe where they aren't successful, and we are all better for it. So thank you so much for listening. If you want to hear more philosophical breakdowns of your favorite bands, if you want me to analyze lyrical and musical themes of other bands, put it in the comments below and perhaps I will be able to get to that or not. It really just depends on what's happening week to week. You know, if there's a big album drop, I'm going to have to cover that or some other big philosophical event. But in the meantime, I'm always thinking about doing these sort of episodes. This is that perfect blend of my love and appreciation for metal and also my love for thinking about these things beyond just the surface and sharing it with you all. And Gojira is the perfect band for that because, like I said, they don't just do tongue-in-cheek songs about death. It's not a joke that is really betraying their subconscious. They come right out from their very first album, not trying to hide it in allegory. This is about existentialism, and I love it. I love Gojira. I hope you love it. Again, please like and subscribe. Tell me what you think. Do you have a different interpretation of the album? Put it in the comments. And if you're audio only, there's no comment section. All my social media is in the description below. You can send me an email at HeavyMetalPhilosophy@gmail.com. Remember, listen to metal, read philosophy. I love you.